Welcome. Thank you all for being here this morning on what finally feels like fall morning. Nice, rainy, cool morning. My name is April Hugazian. I am with the Youth Leadership Institute, partnering with TCM to do some meeting design and facilitation. Youth Leadership Institute empowers young people to be change agents in their communities. So I'm really happy to be here today. We have a really exciting morning planned for all of you today. So excited to learn some new things together, to get to know each other a little better as well. I'm going to hand it over to my friend Tim Nightingale to kick us off. Welcome, Tim.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. While I'm setting up this mic, just want to thank Assemblymember Joaquin Arambula for being here. He's at the back. And we know how busy life can be, and we also know what it means when you take the choice to be here. And each of you made the choice to be here. So thank you to each of you. I have a 4-year-old daughter and a 1-year-old daughter, and something we do every night is read. I'm sure all of you do as well. It's really wonderful. It's really my favorite part of the day when I get to read to my daughter. I'm going to read a story to you that I read to my daughter. But before I do, I just want you to take a moment. You have Post-it notes and pens. Go ahead and grab one. Go ahead and grab one, yeah. And you can go as far back in time as you want in your life. You can be 10 years old, you can be 12 years old, you can be 19, you can be graduating.
19 again?
Yeah. For a moment you can, for a brief moment in your mind. And you can go back to that place in your life, and you can think about what you wanted for the world. Everybody here cares about something and cared about something. And at some point in your life, you made that choice. I care about this so much, I'm going to get educated about it. I care about this so much, this is going to be my career. I care about this so much, I'm going to do something in this world about it that matters. So take a moment and remember that thought. Remember that idea in your imagination. Go ahead, I'll give you, you don't have to share it with your colleagues, but I'll give you about 10, 12 seconds. Just write 1 or 2 words that remind you of that moment. Thank you. And the name of this book is What You Do with an Idea. Okay? So, let's make sure. The pictures are awesome, but I can't show them all to you. Okay. One day, I had an idea. One day I had an idea. Where did it come from? Why is it here? I wondered. What do you do with an idea? At first, I didn't think much of it. It seemed kind of strange and fragile. I did not know what to do with it, so I just walked away from it. I acted like it didn't belong to me. But the idea followed me. I worried what others would think. What would people say about my idea? I kept it to myself. I hid it away and didn't talk about it. I tried to act like everything was the same as it was before my idea showed up. But there was something magical about my idea. I had to admit, I felt better and happier when it was around. I wanted it. It wanted food. It wanted to play. Actually, it wanted a lot of attention. It grew bigger, and we became friends. I showed it to other people, even though I was afraid of what they would say. I was afraid that if people saw it, they would laugh at it. I was afraid that they would think it was silly. And many of them did. They said it was no good. They said it was too weird. They said it was a waste of time, and that it would never become anything. At first, I believed them. I actually thought about giving up on my idea. I almost listened to them. But then I realized, what do they really know? This is my idea, I thought. No one knows it like I do, and it's okay if it's different and weird and maybe a little crazy. I decided to protect it, to care for it. I fed it good food. I worked with it. I played with it. But most of all, I gave it my attention. And my idea grew, and so did my love for it. I built it a new house, one with an open roof where it could look up at the stars, a place where it could be safe to dream. I liked being with my idea. It made me feel more alive, like I could do anything. It encouraged me to think big, and then to think bigger. It shared its secrets with me. It showed me how to walk on my hands, because, it said, it is good to have the ability to see things differently. I couldn't imagine my life without it. Then one day, something amazing happened. My idea changed right before my eyes. It spread its wings, took flight, and burst into the sky. I don't know how to describe it, but it went from being here to being everywhere. It wasn't just part of me anymore. It was now part of everything. And then I realized, what do you do with an idea? You change the world. So what we've been doing at the children's movement and Cradle to Career, I have my daughter's shoe boxes here, is children's movement has been around a little bit longer. So what we've been doing is we've been taking this shoebox of the children's movement and we've been saying, hey, looks like you have a really good idea. Could you give it to me here? Yeah, thank you. And it looks like you have a really good idea. Could you give it to me here? Oh, there we go. And then we've been reading them and we've been saying, these are great ideas. We should do something about them. And then Cradle to Career and the partnership table was birthed. And we thought, hey, we should do something about that. So let's pretend like this is the Cradle to Career and partnership table box. And this is. So now we had two boxes with ideas from two different groups of people. And we kept thinking, wow, these ideas are so good. I wish they were in the same box. So moving forward, what Linda Gleason has decided to do, and I think we will find it to be very, very exciting, is one big idea at a time. One big idea will be presented to Cradle to Career, and they will put their ideas into that big idea. And then one big idea will be presented, that same big idea will be presented to the children's movement. They'll be put in there. And then we'll have all our ideas in the same box. And we're going to do this one at a time, one big idea at a time, presenting it to Cradle to Career, presenting it to the children's movement, collecting it, and then we're going to look through it and say, wow, what can we do with all these ideas? And the book that I just read has a suggestion that you can use those ideas to change the world. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tim. That was beautiful. It's awesome to start the morning off with a story. We are going to just do a couple of minutes at your table of introductions among your small groups, okay? So in your small groups, go ahead and quickly go around, introduce yourself, and the kind of work that you do, and something about yourself that you'd like the team to know about you, okay? So just introduce yourself at your tables. We'll have about 5 to 7 minutes to do it. You'll hear the bell and we'll come back, okay? We're going to bring it back now. Thank you all for connecting. At TCM, we like to provide intentional opportunities for us to connect and build community because we know that our collaborations and our working together are much more productive when we know each other and we're building relationships and maybe even get to a point where we trust each other. So we always want to make a point to provide those opportunities here for us to build some community. Before we move on to some exciting updates and announcements, wanting to know, does anyone feel compelled to introduce someone that they met for the first time today? Anyone like? Yes, please. We have a corded mic, so I can't pass it off. Can you project? I can project. Awesome.
Joyce Eden, and I have the privilege of being here representing nursing here in the Central Valley, but I want to introduce you to Oscar Williams, who's a professional volunteer.
Awesome. Thank you, Oscar.
He's served on many things affecting children in the community, so it's a privilege to meet Oscar today.
We're so happy to have you here today, Oscar. Thank you so much. Would anyone else? Yes, please.
Okay, but I want to cheat, so sorry. I'm Kim Nystrom Geist. I'm presiding judge of the Juvenile Delinquency Court, and we are starting a project to create a calendar to address the needs of kids who have been trafficked, either primarily through sex trafficked or who are at risk. So we are targeting that population. And so this is not somebody new, but this is somebody new to this group. So this is Yana Nevashenitz. Yana is our contracted court coordinator for that position. So she's new, you'll probably see her around, and we have a lot to do, so we're looking forward to working with everybody.
Wow. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Great, awesome. We could do so many more introductions today, but we are going to move on to some exciting announcements and updates from the Cradle to Career Partnership and from the Children's Movement. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Linda Gleason. Good morning, Linda.
Good morning, April. Good morning. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so impressed with this human trafficking court and the creativity that our court continues to have in looking at issues in our community and identifying what they can do about it. I just think the way that you meet these with expansive thinking and can-do attitudes, I continue to be so impressed. So I'm so glad you're here today, Yana. And Preston, thanks for being here, Housing Authority. Yes, good morning. Good morning, head of our Housing Authority. We've got... Yeah. We have a handful of superintendents here today, and Housing Authority was really represented at our Strive Together conference. So Cradle to Career is a member of the Strive Together network, which is 70 communities across the country that are doing this work. And Fresno was there in full force. We had 14 people, great cross-section of representation, sector representation, and levels in their organization. I was so thrilled that we were able to expose that many people to what's going on nationally. And it also, I think, Hank, I don't know, would you agree with me? I felt very proud of where we are as a community in relationship to the other communities. Yeah, I think it was eye-opening for many of us. And the children's movement and that piece of our ecosystem, if you will, is a big part of what is admirable about Fresno. The other communities looking at us are very interested in how we've brought this network of middle managers, service providers, practitioners, superintendents, yes, heads of institutions as well together to really make sure that our thinking is collectively capturing the expertise and the perspective of the many people that are involved and committed to this work. So I was thrilled about that experience and bringing that many more champions back to our community. One thing I just wanted to point out about Cradle to Career with regard to our work groups, and that you all have been so instrumental in beginning. Just wanted to share out the point of difference of these work groups. We're now really working on shifting our culture to making sure that what we are doing is working. So our commitment to data, our commitment to incrementally measuring the progress to make sure that our interventions are doing what we had intended them to do is a big part of how we are managing these work groups. And I want to thank Brooke Frost for her facilitation of those. She and Christy Jackson from Fresno Unified presented at this conference on behalf of their attendance work group. Awesome, it went really well. They do surveys at the end of these work groups. They had very high marks. People felt like the material was very informative and compelling, and so thank you for your leadership and for your courage in doing that, because that is, it takes that for sure. And Rhyme Magic, led by Meredith Wiley, thank you. We have a pilot that finished up with a partnership with Fresno Probation and Fresno County Superintendent of Schools. We actually tested a decoding reading intervention with children at juvenile hall. The results were remarkable. And we have a report on those findings for those of you that are interested on the Cradle to Career website, both the attendance work group and the Rhyme Magic work group. So we're interested in now working really closely with Fresno County Superintendent of Schools to get that intervention scaled to that school at juvenile hall. So thank you again for all that you have done to be the inspiration of what is now the children's movement. And thank you, Tim, for your presentation around that, and the Cradle to Career Partnership, which is this connection of all of you that are so close to the work, and then the Cradle to Career Partnership, which is the institutional leadership. So we're really working to institutionalize that communication loop, and it's been exciting, and you guys have been the source of wisdom and motivation around that happening for our community. So regarding TCM, I'm going to ask Mary Jane to come up, and Carol, would you mind grabbing my flowers in the kitchen? Mary Jane, I wanted to have you come up, and Mary Jane's going to give you a little bit of a snapshot about Our Children This Week, which is a new product of the children's movement. Mary Jane was our entrepreneur in residence for a year and helped us lead the strategic development of TCM, especially as Cradle to Career was coming on board. I want to thank you for your role and the contribution of your experience and your expertise in that role for the year. It made a huge difference. I feel very good about where we've landed. I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about Our Children This Week, but I wanted to just take this moment to extend our gratitude and formally thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you to everyone on the part of the TCM network, the TCM advisory team. It's been an honor to just serve this group. One of the things that we're super excited about as I sort of transition from this role was just the ability to provide more services to our network, right? Like, we are a pretty strong network. We have about 3,000 folks who are signed up to kind of receive our emails, so that's great. And we also have an active group who come together, of course, every year at our breakfast, and congratulations to Linda and the whole team. For those of you who were at the State of Our Children's breakfast in August, I mean, that was a pretty powerful event. And we had over 500 people get up early in the morning and get together and, have a community conversation about our children. So one of the things that we heard from our network was this idea that, we see the outcomes that we have in our county for our children, right? Especially our Cradle to Career report that has come out. And we know that there are certain things about our community and the way that we're working with children that we know need to get better. right? And we also know that there's great work of people who are doing things that are making a difference in the lives of children right here, right now. And so part of that is when we come together at these TCM action forums, right, we do a lot of learning. And we've heard so many things about great programs that are currently happening right here in Fresno and across the state that we can learn from and we can begin to implement or to scale up. And one of the things that we've heard is, you know, we're learning about these things now, right? Like, why isn't this happening more, right? And who can we talk to just help share more of this information so we can make sure that the right people who are making important decisions in our community are hearing about this as well. And so one of the things that we wanted to do was just to start a weekly email. It's going to be called Our Children This Week, that just provides information to you, our members of this network, right, that helps to connect the bridge between what we've learned, what we're learning here in this room, right, and at these forums, right, and connect them to places where we might be able to raise our voices and help make sure that other folks know what we've learned as well. Right, so part of what we're going to be doing with that weekly email is just sharing out some news stories about what's happening in children's issues and children's policy. Hopefully trying to get as much local content as we can as it's created, but also sharing out information from across the state and the nation. Right, so that's a key part is in our News Watch section of our newsletter. You'll also be getting a Policy Watch section. So we're obviously at the end of a legislative session, but in January, right, there'll be new policies that'll be coming to the floor at the state level, and so we'll be able to share with you the pieces of legislation that you, our network, are following, right? So we will be asking you to let us know what it is that you're following, and we'll just be able to provide you a one place, right, where once a week it'll hit your email and you can click through and just check on updates and see what's happening with that, right? So these are the things that are important to you. We've already had sort of a little focus group to collect some of those ideas, and as we get further into that in the new year, you can let us know what you're tracking. And of course, we know that there's a couple of big things at the federal level related to healthcare and related to children's insurance and other things like that that we just know are important to people. And so we'll just be connecting a link to that as well. And then the third part of that is going to be our Agenda Watch, which just helps you know when decisions are being made about children in our community. And it's just a service that we'll provide where we'll just give you a link so that you can click through and take a look at the agendas for local decision-making bodies that are making decisions that affect our children. Just so that you know that that service is there. We're not taking a position on the items, but just as a public benefit to our network. We know you guys are concerned about the welfare of our kids, and just giving you an opportunity to know when things are happening so that you can make a decision for yourself about whether or not you want to be more informed about that. So that's pretty much what we're doing with this newsletter. It's a service to you, our network. We know we're learning so much in this room, and we know sometimes we walk out the door and go, what do we do now, right? So this is just an opportunity to just provide more information. We want to just be a trusted and reliable source of information to connect folks just like you who care about our kids, just so that you have additional resources at your disposal in all the good work that you're doing. And so with that, I want to just take a moment and introduce the editor. We've been sort of figuring out, like, what do we do, right? We need somebody to kind of help make sure that this thing actually gets out and sent every week and has sort of an eye on it. So we're really, really happy that Meredith Wiley has sort of agreed to join on, and she will be our editor, and she has extensive experience in early childhood development and in juvenile justice. So we're just super excited to have Meredith be a part of that team. And we'll be sending out this service to you. The first one should be hitting your inboxes here in the next few weeks. And, we'll be on Monday. Excellent. And then, we'll welcome your feedback, and we'll take some time to kind of query you about it as we begin the new year. So that's a little bit about that, and we're just excited to just keep providing services that the network is asking for and that we think could be valuable to you in this great work. So thank you so much, and that's that.
I'm excited about this, and do you have a question? Yep. I'm really excited about this partnership and the deeper connection that Fresno is playing and being intentional about with regard to legislation. Again, Assemblymember Joaquin Arambula and Anna, thank you so much for being here. Congratulations on 2 bills that You were instrumental in, and a few of our people, Matilda Soria and Lupe Jaime from Fresno County Superintendent of Schools, helped actually write some legislation, contributed a great deal. They both were signed by the governor last week, and one in particular is directly related to child care subsidies. Just feel really good about the millions of dollars that we're going to be able to bring back to Fresno as a result of that legislation. So thank you so much again, Assemblymember Arambula. So we're introducing Go Public Schools here today, and wanted to do that because as we, again, as a network, are becoming more informed about what we all know collectively and what we can do, this opportunity to expose you to the work of Diego Arambula and Mary Jane in the form of Go Public Schools was important for us for a couple of reasons. One is we're trying collectively to learn more about how to use data to frame what we understand about what's going on. And we all know that we've got a lot of data out there, but how are we actually connecting it and discerning it in a way that helps to inform where we need to focus as a community? And these two are particularly proficient at that. And then as well, I think we find ourselves struggling with what we need to do to actually deepen our connections and our relationships with the community. So how does community engagement and that reality, what the communities, the parents of our children know, how does that actually help to better inform our work, and how do we build those bridges out to the community? And these two are testing a lot of those techniques as well, and so we have a lot to learn from them. I want to start by just introducing Diego to you. He's a native Fresnan. We are so fortunate to have these young people coming back to Fresno that are so bright and capable, and he's returned home with his wife and 2 daughters. For more than 10 years, he's been a passionate advocate for creating equitable schools that prepare every child to lead a fulfilling life. He's worked as a classroom teacher, principal, and executive leader for some of the most innovative schools in the country. Diego's currently serving as the executive director of Go Public Schools in Fresno. He received an AB in government from Harvard University and a master's in education from Stanford. He's a Pahara Aspen Education Fellow and member of the James Irvine New Leadership Network. He is also on the board of Summit Public Schools and the Downtown Fresno Foundation. So I know you would prefer that I didn't go into great depth about your background, but I think it's so impressive, Diego, and I'm just so grateful that you are back here in Fresno and you've made a choice to have this be your home. So we're welcome, and thank you for sharing what you know and what you're doing with us.
I am not going to use the microphone, if that's all right. If at any point I drop in volume, let me know. I don't think that should be a problem. I want to introduce a couple of people. So my brother is here, my dad is here. One of them is here to heckle. I'm going to let you choose which of the two. It's my brother. I'll that for you. And additionally, from the Go team, one of the best decisions I made since moving home was hiring Mary Jane to come on as our strategy director. So she's joined our team at Go Public Schools Fresno. And Karina and Ray have joined this summer and have been huge additions to helping us reach out to families and work in our community. I'm going to, the former teacher in me really hesitates to just stand up here and talk at you for 75 minutes. So when they said I had 75 minutes, I figured I should probably say something, right? I shouldn't just like send you into group work. So I have a little bit. But then I actually am going to have you up and out of your seats and moving. So the question that was posed to me is, how can we transform our public schools so that they serve every child and ensure that they can thrive in life? I have a background of working in this, right? So I thought I was gonna follow in my dad's footsteps and get into politics. I worked for Cal Dooley. I went to DC and realized that Washington is not full of my dad and Cal Dooley. And so quickly thought, maybe I've got to figure out a different way to make change. I'd always loved kids. Anytime I had a chance, whether I was volunteering, working, doing anything, I'd always gravitated to just working alongside kids. So I thought, well, teaching, I bet, would be incredibly fun. I was right. It is incredibly rewarding. Can anyone who's ever taught raise your hand up? And can we give them all a round of applause? And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But I also was in a charter network where I was given every opportunity to build a school that exactly worked for me and the students I served. And we just started as one little school. And instead of 180 high school kids, I had 100. And instead of me sending kids out to get a bunch of supports, I had 40 days of professional development every single year paid. And instead of my students falling through the cracks in a school of 2,000, we had 400 kids and every child had a mentor who stuck with them for 4 years. And we did this on the same state budget that every other traditional public high school got. But we realized we had huge flexibility and opportunity in that school setting to transform. And what we were able to do with kids who were choosing to come to our school, but who mirrored the districts that I was serving up in the Bay Area. So we started in Redwood City, where I was a teacher. I became a principal in East San Jose. And in both of those settings, what we were able to do is to graduate 100% of our students, to have 98% of those kids accepted into four-year college, and to double the college graduation rate. And you know, Linda likes to call me young. I'm super gray. I don't feel all that young all the time. I've got little kids, so looking at these makes me just feel tired again. But at the time, right, we actually said, you know, doubling the college graduation rate. Right now in California, the college graduation rate from 9th grade, if you take entering 9th graders, it's 24% roughly. So we were up at 55%. But so often with data, right, taking the flip of it is really helpful. 55% of our kids making it through and getting a college degree was amazing. It meant 45% of our kids weren't. And I can name those kids, right? We were a tiny little school. So I could tell you that Ricky actually wasn't ready, and I knew it. And I could tell you that Jose, didn't have some skills that weren't academic skills, but I knew it. And so we began to think about, we could either blame this on colleges, we could blame this on kids coming without enough, or we could re-envision, even from that starting place, what school looked like. So about 8 years ago, we set about saying, great, we've got that model that's producing those results. How can we actually shift that model to start building in young people the skills they need to truly be successful, even when they don't come with those skills? And some of that was meeting kids where they were academically. A ton of it was building in them the non-cognitive skills, the habits of success, and the other pieces that we know in a place like this plague so many of our young people. And so we set about shifting that. It was hard. And so as I think about how we can transform our schools, I think, gosh, we did that in a network of, at the time it was then 9 schools, each of which was about 400 people, 400 students. And we did it with a set of parents who were choosing to be in our place. So when I moved home a couple of years ago, this was one of the first questions I asked. I said, well, great, I could just start a set of charter schools here, bring that same exact model that I was doing up in the Bay Area back home. And then I began to dig into the data more and more. I started at Heaton Elementary. Anyone know where Heaton is?
I went there.
Go Bulldogs. Yeah, there's my heckler. And when I was there, I had a phenomenal kindergarten teacher and a phenomenal first-second. I was in a first-second combo class. I had 2 phenomenal teachers, but most of the kids were not incredibly well served. And it's not because we had adults who didn't care or love them or try hard. Today, 9 out of 10 kids at Heaton are off grade level. 9 out of 10. And Heaton, by and large, is being run much the same way it was when my brother went there, when I went there. And I began to grapple with this idea, if we don't do something about that, my girls are going to choose when they grow up where they're going to raise their kids. And I hope they choose to come back to Fresno and try and make positive change here. And I hope they don't have that same sense of, will my kids be okay at a school like you? And so I said, great, what can we actually do about that? So I said a set of charters off on the side wasn't going to be it. And I still believe charters play an active and important role in our public education system. But I said I've got to figure out how to go work within and with the district to push this. So I set up some conversations, and for those of you who have ever been in the charter world, it feels like going over to the dark side to talk to districts. And I went over and I said, great, what can we do? How can we do this together? And the biggest thing I heard is, everything that you are doing there is great. It just can't happen here. And I'll reiterate, there's actually nothing illegal about having a teacher be a mentor. Nothing. There's no state law that says you can't do it, and if there was, luckily I know someone who could help us fix that. There's no state law that says you've got to spend money in particular ways. As we've shifted to LCFF, the amount of flexibility, the amount of funding for our districts has gone up, and the amount of flexibility has gone up. What's hard is we know how we've done it. And we know that that's the way it gets done. A good friend of mine who runs a school got rid of homework because all of the research for elementary school says that homework is actually pointless. She got rid of it. And you know what happened? Parents revolted. They're like, but I had homework. I'm like, did you like doing homework? And they're like, no, it's terrible. But all they know is like, but I'm successful today and I had homework. And it's like, cool, I did some crazy things. If everyone has to do all these things that I did to be successful, that can't be right. But we just stick with what we know. So to try and drive that home, I'm going to ask you, just close your eyes, think of a movie that has an alien in it. An alien life form. Think of it. And then think about how many legs that alien has. Think about how many arms it has. Think about whether it has a mouth. Probably 2 eyes. Whether it talks out of its mouth. And you begin to realize that just about every single alien life form that is depicted for us starts with base human. Because we know life form looks like this. So then we're like, oh, it's an alien, so it's going to be like taller. And the arms are going to be more gangly. And maybe there's like a third eye. But clearly all the same basic attributes of life forms exist. And these people are paid millions of dollars to be the most creative people in the world. And it's hard to break. And each one of you sitting in this room has been in traditional schools for 15,000 hours. 15,000 hours of your life from kindergarten through 12th grade. Unless you ditched, then you can just start subtracting a little. Still, you're in the tens of thousands, let's hope. And so when you ask people to re-envision school, you know what we all start with? 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes, a mouth. And then we throw a tablet in it. And then we say, oh, well, now I'm going to have this reading specialist come over on the side. And so this idea of reinventing school and thinking about how we might actually transform is incredibly challenging. It doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means that starting place is hard. And you've actually got to be willing to let yourself start again and say, great, if Heaton wasn't totally working when I went there, and now 9 out of 10 kids are off grade level, is what we need at Heaton a little tweak? Or is what we need a complete rethinking of how Heaton might work? So what we at Go Public Schools Fresno have done is we have partnered with Fresno Unified. Superintendent Nelson has been a huge and important partner with us. We have been talking to board members, we've been talking to cabinet members, and we have taken the mantle of Choosing Our Future, which was a report written 12 years ago that looked honestly at where we were, and set up a set of priorities about where we need to go. And we've asked Superintendent Nelson whether he would be willing, and he has agreed, to allow Go to do Choosing Our Future 2.0. So 12 years later, this district is in a wildly different and better place than it was 12 years ago. Some of you were board members 12 years ago, like Ms. Ryan, and you remember we were on the verge of financial bankruptcy. 50% of our schools were in the bottom 10% academically across the state. And we didn't have a clear sense of how to get out from under that. And Choosing Our Future was written, and a lot was done. We have invested dramatically in our buildings. We have righted the financial ship. We have put in place a lot of really important policies. But nonetheless, some of the data we're going to look at shows you that academically, we still have a long way to go. And so what Go is doing is trying to drive that conversation. And the way that we believe we can do that to help board members, because they have such an important role to play in this, to help cabinet members, to help principals, to help teachers, the way we believe we can do this is to get thousands of residents across the city to take a hard look at where we are today, to walk with urgency, but without throwing stones, to say we must do something to reinvent what schools look like, because we believe those kids are capable. Because when you look at Heaton, you either just have to say that's the kids and that's the best we can do, and I fundamentally disagree, or you have to say something isn't working. And I'm unwilling to say that's on the kids or their parents. I'm unwilling to say this is because we don't have high quality educators in the classroom. And so then what is it, right? And so we have said, great, we need to get set about doing that. We are currently, this week, how many have we had this week, Ray? So we're at 4 so far this week. We have had 4 house parties. So we are asking folks around the city to open up their homes. My mom and my dad were nice enough to invite all of their friends. We had one at their house. Just this week I had one at my house with a group of teachers I know. Nazreen, who is sitting here, is having one at her house tonight. So we will be at 5 of these just this week, where between them we'll have talked to about 140 people. And in rooms just like this, what we are doing is looking at data, envisioning what we want for our own kids and the kids in this city, and then talking about what we collectively can do. Because if all of us are going to sit on the sidelines and hope that Superintendent Nelson can do this alone, we're going to fall flat yet again, and Heaton's going to look just like it does when my girls are raising their girls. And I'm unwilling to have that be what I spend my time doing. So that's what we're doing today. That's my talk. What I'm going to do is we're now going to do a modified version of one of these house parties that we do. So we're going to have you all looking at data, so you're going to be up and around and moving and talking. We typically, for any of the teachers in the room, do this jigsaw style. We figured with all of the tables and whatever, we're not going to do a jigsaw because that would just, the logistics would be tough. So we are going to have you up and out of your seat. You're going to be looking at data, and then you're going to be talking with your group of people who you are currently with, and then we're going to come all back together. So before we do that, so I'm now fully transitioning from great, that's how we transform schools. We engage thousands of people just like you to be a part of the conversation and to walk with urgency about the need to totally transform our schools. So I'm going to shift, and I'm going to ask you to start with our house party by truly closing your eyes. I know this may be the second or third time you've been asked to do that. Don't take a nap. And think about a child you know who is currently in school. They could be younger than school age, but they're currently in school or younger. Could be a student, could be your own child, a grandchild. And let go of every single constraint. There's nothing this child can't do or can't be. In your most perfect world, what is true for this child at age 25? Where do they live? What do they do? How do they spend their time? Who are they in relationship with? What makes them happy? So, thank you for doing that. You all are no different than any of the other house parties we've had. Once you get talking about a kid you love, it is really hard to get you stopped. Can folks, is anyone willing to share the child you thought about and some of the things you thought about as you had your wildest dream for them at 25? Yes.
So I thought about my son, who is 16, he's a sophomore in high school. He's a boy of color. And so when I thought about what I wanted for him at 25, he doesn't know what he wants to study in college or what his career paths are. So, I really just hope that he's happy, that he's healthy, that he's safe, that he hasn't been exposed to social conditions that have diminished his spirit and his joy of life. I hope that he has friends around him, he's able to travel, he has stable employment, and he has stable housing.
Holy moly, that is a big vision, and I love it. I realized I was going to try and capture all of that, and there's just so much. So I'm just going to leave happy, but that's I want to call out a couple of things, though, because I think they're so important, right? The notion that, what 16-year-old really does know, it's such a rare thing. So instead, it's not like I want them to be a veterinarian, but it's I want them to do the thing that they love doing and to make money doing it such that they can afford to actually live in this world. But no one's like, and they need to have a boat, right? Instead, it's this idea of enough, right? I just need them to have enough such that they're not on the edge, right? So I think those pieces, the one other I'll call out, this notion, right, of the people around them is so critical, right? Whether it's that they're married or not, to whom they're married doesn't really matter. It's are they surrounded with people who love them and who they love? And underneath that is actually, and so many of us know this from the work we do, are they able to receive that love? Are they able to give that love in healthy relationships, right? Any others? Yes?
I'll talk about my son too. Yeah, we both thought about our own children, and I think what I shared was that my son, he's the youngest of the four brothers, and he's had three brothers in front of him, and they were always academically very advanced, and so my youngest one he always struggles with his academics. So going through the same school, he had this stigma with him. Hey, your brother was this, your brother was this, or your brother was this, and he had to live up to his brother's what his brothers did, and so it's always been a challenge for him. But for me as a father, I see where other people don't see, or like his teachers don't see it. They just see that he's really struggling in school, he's not at grade level, this and that, and I watch my son and I'm like, this kid's a genius, He, it doesn't show on his grades, it doesn't show on the paper, but I'm sitting there, I'm talking to him, and we have conversations hours at a time about animals, about space. And so my vision for him at 25 is he's either going to be at NASA or he's going to be working at the zoo.
Who knows, it may be NASA, climate change keeps happening, that may be where our next zoos are. And if it's helpful, my brother's 2 years older, my sister is a year older, so I had the exact opposite. I followed and they were like, oh my God, thank you for being good. No, but it's true. But yeah, underneath this, right, so I hear all the time this idea of being academically prepared, which shows up in a bunch of different ways. Right, so some of those ways are doing well enough to ensure, underneath it all, what we really care about is to ensure that they are academically prepared enough to have choices in this world. Right? I never hear a parent say, what I want is for my child to become an electrician and to literally know nothing else, and let's hope that electrician thing sticks. And instead, you sort of hear, I want them to have choices to follow the things that they care about. And the one other piece I'll call out is that there's passion in this, right? You didn't just pick 2 random jobs. You picked things that you know that your son is deeply passionate about, because we hope our young people are able to pursue that. A couple more. Yes.
So I'm a juvenile court judge, so I spend all day, every day talking to kids. And I thought of one specific kid, but he is not atypical. His circumstances are a little bit worse, but I'll be a little more generic. But these are the kids that haunt me and probably haunt our public defender who's right there. Kids who do not have, this particular boy doesn't have a family. He has a lot of people that he's related to, but he does not have a family. He doesn't have any, he has literally no home. Not because mom or dad is homeless, but because they are completely absent. And while he can name a lot of relatives, there isn't one who will allow him to live with them. Partly because he's made some truly bad choices. I'm a delinquency judge and he spends a lot of time with me. But you know, the guy he shows up as in my courtroom is a guy I really like. I keep telling him, will you take this guy other places with you? Because this guy is a pretty good guy. And he's handsome, and he's strong, and he's fun to talk to, and he's articulate. But he has everything that your kids that you just talked about carry with them to teenager. He has none of that. He has not been successful in school. He's so far behind that I don't have tools to give him to try to catch him up. He has no one who's taught him anything, really anything. Whatever a mom or a dad would normally teach a child, like there are consequences to your behavior, or first you do this and then that happens, or you get up and you go to school because that's your work and mom has work and dad has work. He has none of those things. So when I think about him and the path that he's on, and he honestly is not atypical, I see a lot of kids that are on this path. They're either going to be dead or they're going to be criminals. And it is not because they're bad people. It's not because they're undesirable. It's not because they're not redeemable. It's because however they got to this point, there are so many things that are missing along the way. So when I think of what I would wish for him, it's just that he's alive and has a normal life. Whatever that normal life is for him. People who love him, a family, and the basics that most of us take for granted. And those are the kids that are not doing well in our schools. And those are the kids that make it to delinquency court. I mean, some make it to delinquency court and have great parents, and they're going to be just fine. Or they don't have great parents, but they have an adequate family, and they're going to be okay. But there are a lot of boys, like this boy that I thought about, and a lot of girls too, who don't have any of those things that we take for granted. And since they don't have them, they fall through the cracks. And we do have them, so I think it's our job to figure out how we get those resources to them.
It's a skill we know we ought to be teaching, and we don't necessarily have a way to do it, right? I think there are a couple things to call out. One, the hopes and dreams for that child are no different.
Correct.
The reality of whether that child can meet them is wildly different. And we know that to be true.
He could, if somebody could figure out how to get the right tools into his hand.
That's right.
He has potential.
That's right. And yet we know that our system is actually not built, right? It often takes Herculean effort by unbelievable educators stepping well outside of the regular bounds of what is expected and done to help children one at a time like this, instead of actually setting up systems and structures to ensure, regardless of whether you're coming with these things or not, this is a place where you can expect to be successful. And so so underneath all of that is the same hopes and dreams, but an understanding that so often with our current structures, it's so challenging to have true hope like that a child like this is going to end up on the other side. One last one, I saw your hand up.
So the child I thought of, because I know last time I did this I thought of my nephew, but this was a child at a school I work at, and I just could kind of see myself in this child. When I was younger, he was very angry and misunderstood, and so he spends a lot of time in the office at the school, not in the classroom getting educated. And so my hopes and dreams for this child is that growing up, he's given the resources to deal with that in a positive way, so that he doesn't end up, on the other, like he ends up on the good side, not the bad side. So it's like, okay, it's like regardless if you have this issue, you're learning from it in a positive way, not a negative way. So I hope that, he just can grow up and he's given the resources to deal with whatever he's going through, so he can be successful.
And any of us, my brother knows this well, in my house, we do 4-part apologies when you've done something wrong, right, to help ensure that you grow from it. You don't just say, I'm sorry. What's that? Oh, yeah, like, I make him do the 4-part apologies to me, so I've got to coach him. But we do 4-part apologies in my house with my girls, right? And so we talk about it's not just saying I'm sorry, it's reflecting on what you've done, reflecting on how that made someone else feel, and what you'll do differently next time, and then last, you ask for forgiveness and you accept if someone doesn't give it. And so, and I'm giving this to my girls, and we started at 2. And you realize so many kids don't show up with that. And then we get mad when they're in class and they do something wrong and they respond with anger. But that may just be all they know. And yet we continue to run schools where, by and large, when you respond in that way, like, here are the consequences for that choice instead of efforts to truly change it.
Oh, it just gets worse. I've seen it.
That's exactly
them
right.
trying to control this kid, and I'm just like, you guys aren't, I'm just like, I want to step in, but I don't know.
And so this is all to say, as we shift to the next piece, it's all to say, we know when we talk about these things, and like I said, we're now up close to about 20 house parties. We've had a few hundred people come through. What you all have said is no different than what we hear in Southwest, Southeast, Central Fresno. It's no different than Wednesday night when I had teachers. It's no different than on Monday when we were here with the Cradle to Career Partnership, right? What the superintendent said that they hoped. This vision is the same, yet we know, and this is not the first year it's been the case, we know that the reality of getting to that vision is wildly different based on the color of your skin, based on which part of town you live in, based on whether your parents have financial means. We know those things to be true. And we at Go are unwilling to sit and know that to be true and ask teachers who are already working incredibly hard to just try harder. To ask principals who are doing what they can to just do it better. And instead, we're saying there must be a way to get rid of 2 legs, 2 arms, 2 eyes, and to rethink and put adults and kids into different situations to meet every one of these kids exactly where they are and to grow them into the kinds of kids who truly can lead those lives at 25. So, our next step, do you want to say one thing? You're like grimming, so I want to hand it over.
This is the 50 years of education speaking, but I've worked with so many young people who were wanting to be teachers, wanting to be good teachers, but we don't teach them the things they really need, like how a child learns against what they want them to learn. And we have to change how we work with teaching teachers to teach, because we are going to be in this catch-22 forever because we've allowed curriculum to push us forward rather than the child's abilities.
Yeah, so
I'm a crusader. I'm a person who will shout out.
I'm going to make sure that I get your name and number because,
be very happy. I'm retired now.
Let's say I'll follow you on that crusade. I'm choosing to take one bureaucracy at a time. So I'm focusing K-12, but I'll tell you, this is where so often, having been a classroom teacher and then a principal, it is so frustrating at times to hear the narrative that it's about kids. It is equally frustrating to hear that this is about teachers, because you realize neither set of them are set up to succeed right now. Right? Neither set of them. And are there some kids who are showing up unready? Absolutely. Are there some teachers who shouldn't be in a classroom in front of kids? Absolutely. Is that actually the core of our problem? Right? Mary Jane, who used to work inside of the district, would tell you 85% of kids show up with food in their belly, right? A parent at home, a roof over their head, like ready to learn. They show up every day. So we've got a set of kids who are dealing with some severe and traumatic issues. We know we've got to build for that. Most of our kids, despite some issues, are showing up every single day with food in their belly, with a loving parent at home, with a roof over their head. And we need to find a way to make these schools work for those kids and to set it up so that adults are actually ready to work with those kids. So we are going to send you to data. We have got about 35 minutes left. So we are going to ask you to do about 15 minutes looking at data. So like I mentioned, this is a modified version of what we are doing in homes, at churches, at restaurants, in our offices, around the city with different groups of families. We look at all of this data. We give families typically a little bit longer to go through everything. But we ask a couple of questions to sort of close out. So we're going to do this in this group, which I know not everyone can see each other, but hopefully this works. So the first question we ask is, you just looked at a lot of different pieces of data. You looked at a lot of different artifacts, information about schools. Is there anything sitting with you right now that you feel like you're going to walk out of this room today still thinking about? Yes.
This lady's point right here about, because we talk a lot about how do we help these students, and I think maybe sometimes we're missing like I'm a future teacher. I go to Fresno State. I'm in school to be a teacher, and even talking to like this gentleman about certain things that I'm even doing, like how to write a report, like just a certain report. Like I'm not even really learning that. I'm learning that in my job, and I'm not learning that. Or like, I have to take like 5 history classes, all from maybe a different time, and it's just like, why is there no class on how to deal with children's behavior? And that just kind of really weighs on me. And the other thing I just wanted to say, when we talk about children and we talk about issues with children, I don't know if maybe there's ever a time where we do talk about it, but I feel like sometimes we just assume that all these children are not normal, but they don't have any like cognitive disabilities. I feel like sometimes we misrepresent some of these children we talk about and not include some of these children with cognitive disabilities, because we talk about barriers in the classroom, we talk about barriers at home, and it's just like some of these students face all of that along with cognitive disabilities.
That's right. 10% of our kids in Fresno Unified, which is roughly the average across the state, are identified with a special need. And let's think about it. We built schools to work for the average kid.
Yeah.
If you have not read this book, it's called The End of Average by Todd Rose. Like, I will buy it for you. It is so unbelievable. It is called The End of Average. And essentially what he breaks, he shows you how much you believe average is a thing that's real. And then he breaks it that it actually isn't real. And then he shows you how many things are built to serve average. And so as we think about students with cognitive disabilities, as we think about students with identified special needs, as we think about English language learners, as we think about students who are above grade level, as we think about kids who are passionate about different things, right? This is actually the majority of our kids. Yet we build schools for a different majority, right? That doesn't actually exist. And there's one thing he mentions in the book, and then I'll kick it back to you. He says schools right now they incent you to be the best average you possibly can be.
Yes.
And it was so killer because I was great at school. I loved the game. I was the best average student at Edison. But I wasn't like a phenomenal mathematician. I was pretty good at it. I wasn't a phenomenal historian. I was pretty good at it. Right? And students who are unbelievable writers, right, can only get an A one time in English, and then they still have to go spend 54 minutes in math class. They still need to go spend 54 minutes in zoology, right? And so this idea of average is such a fundamental part of this that isn't working. Anything else that you saw that stands out?
thing that really stands out to me more than anything else is the fact that we are giving our children a graduation certificate that says they are competent in all of these skills. And then they go on to community college and they're failing. We're selling them a bill of goods. And it makes
Yeah,
me mad.
and there are a couple of different places where we see this, right? We tried to show rising graduation rates that have not been met with rising proficiency rates. We showed how grades are not correlated to proficiency, right? If you didn't get a chance to see that, 50% of students right now in Fresno Unified who earn an A in math class are not on grade level in math.
Wow.
50%. And so I'll tell you, when we're doing these sessions with low-income families, that particular piece crushes families. Because they will almost always say, like, she's doing great, it's him I'm worried about. And then when they see that, they're like, oh my God, maybe she's not doing great either. Right? And then you think about it for kids, sorry, last thing, and they feel lied to as well. That's right. Because then they get to college and they're like, wait, I don't actually know math at this level. Like, I did what you told me I was supposed to do, and I'm not actually ready to read, to write, to do math, to do these things in a way that I thought I was, and I spent 15,000 hours doing it. Yes?
Well, just to kind of go along with that, I think, you know, when you look at the math and the English scores as well, I think there's this notion that if you are proficient in math and English, that you are college or career ready. And neither one of those are true, because math and English don't necessarily correlate with the skills that you need to be successful in life. Just generally speaking, as a parent, as an employee, you know, all of those things. So, and kind of my takeaway is that I think there was a comment about preparing educators, and I think that the traditional preparation for teachers need to change.
Amen.
From not, and you were talking about the curriculum, but I think we need to do more about recognizing that our populations experience a variety of trauma, whether it's based upon racial trauma, socioeconomic trauma, the trauma that our children experience in the course of our life, or their life, is so extreme, and the place where they're supposed to be safest is at our schools. And it's because we have ill-prepared teachers that they don't feel safe, or they don't want to go to school for whatever reason. And so we really have to begin to change the culture and the characteristics and the competencies of what we define as a teacher.
Yeah. Yep, and the structures around it. That's actually what we do that.
Right.
Any other things sticking with you?
So I look at the chart that was showing how ill-prepared people are when they leave. But having listened to Meredith before, I wondered, what if we assessed when they came to us? Because I hear all the educators putting a lot of pressure on yourselves, and I really don't think it's you. I mean, I think that you're trying as hard as you can, but I think that maybe the tools we're using aren't the best. Because what if, when we assessed for kindergarten, we were assessing for trauma and assessing early, not just like, do you know your colors or shapes, but who are you, so that we can try to design an education for you that takes whatever your strengths and weaknesses are, and we build on the strengths and give you tools for the weaknesses, so that when you leave, you're good to go. I mean, it's not, I don't think it's the teachers, and I don't think it's the systems. I think it's like, we're just diagnosing the wrong stuff, and then we're giving medicine after there's been an amputation, and that's not working.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll just reinforce that some of this is, right, I could not agree more. Why we aren't assessing for that and then meeting children where they are is beyond me.
We didn't know. We didn't used to know.
That's right, but some of it is also structural, right? When would we do it? Like, literally just when in a school day would we do that? When would teachers then look at that? When would teachers be given the time to actually address that? And so this is where the two arms, the two legs, that actually needs to shift. If we're going to start saying, great, we know that you're coming with trauma, and we need to address that, how are we setting up a school that actually allows us to do it? Because we could know now that kids are coming with trauma, and then just be like, whew, I've still got 52 minutes with you in 9th grade history. So like, hey, class of 37, and even if we get smaller class sizes and it's 35, I can't actually meet you where you are, and like I can't do anything with that. And so we've got to re-envision what that looks like.
Yeah, and I think there's also an argument to be made that we need growth measures as opposed to, proficiency or grade level only measures to look at in terms of, are we succeeding in the classroom? If all we're looking at is, are you on grade level, we're not taking into consideration where our kids come from. I think it's important so that we can know whether we're actually, living up to some hypothetical standards that we have for our kids graduating. But in terms of evaluating, the processes that are in place, it just seems to me that just looking at point in time measures, are you on grade level versus you came in 4 grade levels behind and now we've got you only 2 grade levels behind, that would be a useful thing to know.
Really quickly before I jump to these two, I'll just note, and Kay, that I really geek out on the data. I've been working with folks in the equity and access department at the district to see if we can create a trajectory tool that does exactly this, right? I care, we are where we are today. At some point, we can either be angry about that or just admit, we are where we are today. And a child who's in 5th grade reading at 3rd grade level, that's real. And we're either just going to say, you're behind and I can never catch you up, or we're going to say, can I get you to 5th grade readiness in a year, which is incredibly challenging to grow you 3 years in one, but can I grow you a year and a half this year? And unless we're actually looking at those numbers, we're not valuing a teacher or a kid who at the end of the year is going to look at a low grade or a low proficiency score. But we still need to be able to say to that kid and that teacher, kudos, you grew a year and a half this year. And so we would love for the district, which has access to all of this data, to actually start making that trajectory tool. And then to say we teach 74,386 kids in this district. Wouldn't it be amazing to say what we really want is 74,386 kids on trajectory to be proficient and ready by the time they leave, no matter where they are today. And that seems a lot better than saying we need 100% of kids in 3rd grade at readiness. But we don't look at that, nor do we value it. And what we know is actually the kids who are behind actually grow often the least, right? And so their trajectory is off right now and is getting more off every single year.
I was going to say, how about if we redefine what grade level means?
Yeah, and there's,
What it encompasses.
this is a great example of not 2 arms, 2 legs, right? Why is it that we batch all 7-year-olds to look like every other 7-year-old? I love that my 2009 Camry looks like other 2009 Camrys. I hate that my 7-year-old is expected to be like other 7-year-olds. One works, the other, my daughter is not a factory piece and shouldn't be just in this place because she's 7. But that's how we've treated it.
The other, getting back to Judge Nystrom-Geist's comment too, the trauma and the assessments that could be done also brings in the cross-sector need, because we've been talking about this all in the relationship of the education system, and actually there's possibilities to bring in the health system to help cross-sector doing some of those assessments in a way, but the issue then is sharing the data, and then once the data is shared, then what do they do with it in the system? But I think there's more opportunities for different places to do what she's talking about. That's right. That would be useful.
So I'm sorry, I'm gonna cut us off and remind you what we're doing. So we're here to talk about transforming schools. And I started by telling you that I've run a set of schools that had transformational experiences for kids. And that now the question is, how do we do this at scale across the district?
I have a question.
I have a question about that.
How involved were your parents?
Yeah, that was
in
my
this change? In the schools that you worked in? How did you encourage the parents involved?
We required nothing of the parents. We gave them massive opportunities to come. And again, little things that aren't 2 arms and 2 legs, right? We gave them a set of tools so that this trajectory tool is not something I just made up. We actually built it. in my old set of schools so that parents could look at it every day and knew what their kids were working on and where they were. We helped them sort of figure out how they could support at home better. When we would bring families in, we would hold sessions in Spanish and make English speakers wear translation sets so that they were the ones who were being translated to, right, to help more of our Spanish-speaking families feel welcome. And just little things like that. And so what I always say to other school leaders is, it's incredibly challenging to get parents engaged, I fully get it, but it's also, that's predicated on everything stays exactly the same. And when you shift that, you find that parents want to get engaged. They just don't often know how or don't feel welcome.
For years we shut parents out, and they're really the key to success.
So we at Go Public Schools Fresno, and I personally, along with Mary Jane, Karina, and Ray, believe that the way that we create this transformational change is by coming together, saying we see the data, we're willing to confront it and not excuse it away, but we're also not going to walk out of here pointing fingers at kids and parents and teachers and school leaders. And we're going to ask our school board members, we're going to ask our higher staff to say, what can we do as a community to support you? Go is taking the charge of writing Choosing Our Future, so you all began to move us toward what are the policy recommendations that we can suggest to the district. We are going to spend the next 4 or 5 months, we're doing more house parties, bringing folks together to look at the data. The next step is to actually say, and what can we do? And what we are going to be unwilling to do is say, what can we do to get 2% better next year? We're actually going to say, what can we do that truly meets kids where we are? What can we do that re-envisions for a teacher to put them in a position to be successful? What can we do to get rid of the 2 arms, the 2 legs, to allow McLean, Fresno High, Roosevelt, our middle schools, to have transformational growth for kids? And so we are going to keep doing this work. We have a big event in December. We have invited the superintendent and a couple of the cabinet members who have agreed to join us. We will soon invite our board members to come. They will come as listeners to hear from the hundreds of families, educators, students who we've been in discussion with, and here's what we see with the data, here's what we want, and then for us to sort of set the next stage. That's December 6th. We are still picking a location now. All of you, if it's all right, we are going to be in touch with you over email. We try not to do too many. Some of you have already come up and said you'd love to host a house party. I love that, thank you. If you'd like to attend one, if you'd like to let us know that you're going to come to the December 6th event, we have little commitment cards on the outside. We also have little stickers that say, I believe in Fresno students, because we at Go do, and we believe that the last thing we should do is walk out of this room and say that it's the kids in this city. Because I actually think the talent we have right now in this city is unbelievable, and we lose it every single year. Like, we lose it. And this city can be different if we are different. So I'm committed to doing that. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it.
So much to Diego and Go Public Schools. This is a tremendous opportunity for us here in Fresno and something that we can all be part of. So thank you, Diego, for sharing that with us. We are going to wrap for the day. We do welcome you to our next action forum, which we will be, Senator Flores will be presenting on preterm birth and some of the work that's going on in Fresno around that. So please join us on December 8th, right here on a Friday. We look forward to seeing you, and you'll get an invite as usual. We also would like your feedback on today's action forum. Your input is really important to us, and we look at your input and we shape future action forums for that. So please take the Post-its on your table. Let us know what you feel was the best, most effective part of today, and let us know where there might be areas for improvement or ideas that you have. And before you leave the room, you can post them on that big Post-it right over there on your way out. Best part, areas for improvement, ideas. If you can be as specific as possible, we really value that. And thank you all for being with us today. We wish you a really happy and fun weekend. Thank you.